What are some of the dumbest crimes people will commit? Let's find out, starting with number 5, every single program. Paradise Williams led a massive fraud scheme that stole millions from pandemic relief programs. Same as apparently pretty much everyone, right? She orchestrated this scheme to fund a luxurious lifestyle, taking advantage of programs designed to help those in need during the COVID-19 pandemic. From June of 2020 to February of 2022, Williams and her associates submitted over 125 fraudulent applications for various pandemic assistance programs, including the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and CARES Act unemployment benefits. They used falsified documents such as bank statements and tenant ledgers to defraud these programs of more than $3.3 million. Williams personally pocketed over $2 million. She spent this money on luxury cars, lavish vacations, cosmetic surgery, jewelry, and designer goods. It's funny how none of these people ever do anything responsible with the money they steal, right? They're never starting a savings account or paying off credit card debt or starting a college fund. It's always fancy vacations and high-end brands. We're sure there's something profound about that, but we don't know what it is. Anyway, Paradise Williams ended up pleading guilty to charges of wire fraud and money laundering. Her actions carried severe penalties, with wire fraud related to a major disaster punishable by up to 30 years in prison. However, the government recommended a sentence of no more than 9 years. Williams was ultimately only sentenced to 5 years in prison. U.S. Attorney Tessa M. Gorman talked about the gravity of her crimes, talking about how Williams funded her extravagant lifestyle by stealing taxpayer money meant to prevent evictions during the pandemic. It's weird how Gorman's going to talk about how serious these crimes were, and then Williams gets a sentence far less than what was recommended. 5 years is no joke, but it's way better than 9 and light years better than 30. Williams didn't act alone. She enlisted over 50 associates, including 5 main co-defendants, to help submit fraudulent applications. They posed as fake tenants, landlords, and small business owners in need of assistance, using falsified documents to secure the funds. The group laundered the stolen money through cash withdrawals, wire transfers, and expensive purchases. Williams also received over $1.2 million in kickbacks from her associates. Several of Williams's co-defendants, including Darius Jackson and Tia Robinson, have been sentenced. Jackson received 3 years in prison, while Robinson got 18 months, while other co-defendants are awaiting their sentencing at the time of this video. As part of her plea agreement, Williams will pay nearly $3.3 million in restitution to the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the U.S. Small Business Administration. She'll also forfeit over $2 million, which were the proceeds from her scheme. Williams and her crew were dumb for running this, since that kind of money is going to get noticed, and their real names were all over everything. Even just the sheer volume of applications, 125 of them, was going to attract attention. There was no way any of them were going to get away with everything. What a weird time the pandemic was. Number 4, just a matter of time. Florida man Joseph Toro has been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for defrauding the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, known as the FEHBP. The government really loves having overly long names and reducing them to initials, doesn't it? It's like they think it sounds cool or something. Anyway, Toro was also ordered to pay over $4.4 million in restitution and will face 3 years of supervised release. Toro owned Reawakenings Wellness Center, a rehab facility in Miramar, Florida, that treated patients, including those covered by FEHBP, until its closure in 2018. After the facility was shut down, Toro continued to submit fraudulent insurance claims for treatment that was never provided. He impersonated former patients and redirected their mail to addresses he controlled to receive the reimbursement checks. Over a year, Toro submitted claims worth $6.7 million and obtained around $4.2 million in proceeds. Additionally, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Toro secured a $150,000 loan from the U.S. Small Business Administration under false pretenses, claiming his facility was still operating operational, even though it wasn't. Toro used the fraudulently acquired money to fund a lavish lifestyle. For example, he bought a waterfront mansion in Jupiter, Florida, a Lamborghini Aventador, a Mercedes G-Wagon, 2 Cadillac Escalades, and a high-end Audemars Piguet watch. Despite his fraud, Toro's extravagant purchases have now been forfeited to the feds. It was really stupid for Toro to scam the government while his business was shut down. Submitting fraudulent insurance claims and impersonating former patients after his facility had already closed was always going to raise red flags, since all it was ever going to take was just one person to check up on him. He essentially left a paper trail that made it easier for authorities to catch him as soon as they started looking. Toro ended up with 4 years in prison, but hey, at least he made it on this video. Number 3, paging doctor scammed. In Chester County, Pennsylvania, 2 women, Danielle King and Michaela Ziegler, got themselves in some big trouble. They were accused of embezzling over $450,000 from their employer, a doctor based in West Chester, along with attempting to sell some land he owned worth over $1 million and tampering with his will. The charges against them include theft, conspiracy, forgery, and identity theft. Back in September of 2021, Dr. Romero Naidu, the victim, noticed unauthorized transactions across multiple bank and credit card accounts. Ziegler and King, who had been employed for about a year, had abruptly quit 1 month before Dr. Naidu noticed the discrepancies. So naturally, they were quickly identified as suspects. During their tenure, they had unrestricted access to Naidu's financial accounts, leading to the theft of substantial sums. Investigators uncovered lavish expenditures by the suspects, including spending on family, significant others, and various personal expenditures such as tanning, healthcare, and vacations in New Jersey. Notably, the funds were also funneled through PayPal accounts in an effort to launder the stolen money. Further investigations revealed an attempt by the women to sell 2 of Dr. Naidu's real estate properties without his consent. Fortunately, the listings were withdrawn after the doctor's family intervened, preventing a potential loss exceeding $1 million. Moreover, a bold move by Ziegler to alter Dr. Naidu's will was also thwarted. She had sent a fraudulent email to Naidu's attorney aiming to secure 85% control of his estate. Dr. Naidu confirmed that Ziegler was never meant to be a beneficiary. At the time of this video, the case is still ongoing. So what was the plan here? Did they really think no one was ever going to notice missing money and property? They did it all electronically too, so there were electronic footprints everywhere. Ziegler literally contacted Dr. Naidu's lawyer and tried to change his will as if the lawyer was just going to say, "Oh, okay, who are you again? And this is what Dr. Naidu wants." Okay, there was no way this was ever going to work. Number 2, quote unquote friends. Arizona couple Christian Probst and Margot Barr were arrested for their involvement in a high-profile burglary involving firearms and antique art. The Chandler Police Department reported that the couple, originally friends of the burglary victims, had helped them move valuable items into storage units in Arizona from their home in North Carolina. Probst and Barr had rented a storage unit in the same facility just days before the crime. They planned to gain access to the units containing the valuable items. Surveillance footage captured them grinding off the lock of a storage unit and stealing a safe filled with 15 various types of firearms. They also took a large Chinese vase and other antiques, making their entire haul worth around $75,000. Once the theft was reported and the footage was reviewed, authorities kept a close eye on their residence. On one occasion, Probst and another individual were seen loading a large weapon safe into a white Toyota 4Runner, apparently belonging to Probst's dad. Probst and Barr led a lavish lifestyle, funded by their theft. They splurged on luxury items, fine dining, and expensive vacations. The stolen art and firearms fetched around $75,000 on the black market, allowing them to buy designer luxury items such as Gucci and Louis Vuitton. Their home, filled with high-end electronics and designer furniture, reflected their stolen money. They frequently traveled, staying in 5-star hotels and dining at upscale restaurants. The police eventually got a search warrant for the residence. When officers arrived, Probst and Barr bar freaked out and barricaded themselves inside for 5 hours. A SWAT team used gas, a robot, and a dog to flush them out. The two were eventually found hiding in the attic, but eventually fell through the ceiling and were captured. Okay, once SWAT was there, what was their plan? Because they're not getting away, you know? Both Probst and Barr were charged with multiple felonies, including burglary, theft, and criminal damage. Surprise, surprise, Probst was on probation at the time for a previous charge. Details of the final outcome of this case weren't publicly reported. They had to be aware that there were cameras everywhere, so they had to know they were going to be recorded. Yet they still went through with it? If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here to find out just how desperate these guys were trying to scam. Number 1, last-ditch effort. In Lakeport, Florida, Florida man Joshua Kolotka got himself arrested after a bold but baffling attempt to dodge police by disguising himself as a woman. His choice of a white cardigan, a blue patterned midi dress, and a striking blonde wig was an unusual strategy to evade capture following a theft incident. Glades County Sheriff's deputies were investigating a boat theft when they spotted Kolotka leaving a residence decked out in his disguise. The scene was quickly secured, and he was arrested on the spot and held without bail. The cops were initially on the lookout for a suspect after recovering a stolen boat at the nearby Old Calusa Lodge. Their search led them directly to Kolotka, who happened to catch their attention with his disguise, who actually stood out when he was simply trying to blend in. Once he was identified, police discovered his warrants, and boom goes the dynamite. Adding to the charges of theft, Kolotka was wanted on 2 existing warrants for unrelated crimes, which included the theft of a John Deere utility vehicle. The sheriff's office shared images of Kolotka's costume alongside his mugshot without the wig, revealing his usual buzz cut. This peculiar attempt at a disguise drew widespread attention and amusement on social media. Comments ranged from humorous jabs at his appearance, calling out his stylist, to expressions of gratitude towards the deputies for their continuous efforts in maintaining safety. With the way things are today, Kolotka should have just leaned into his disguise as a lifestyle choice. The police don't really need to deal with another offended community. What are some of the most ridiculous ones that actually worked? Let's get started with number 7. Love is blind. Then 72-year-old Angela Nwachukwu got married to 27-year-old CJ Nwachukwu just 3 months after meeting him. But the age difference and short courting period aren't the only red flags in this story of love. You see, Angela lived in Britain and CJ lived in Nigeria. The couple were thousands of miles apart, and Angela had to marry him on the first day they met back in Nigeria. How romantic. The only problem with their rosy marriage now was that the UK Home Office had refused to give CJ a visa to come to the UK. The argument was that he didn't prove that he had enough financial backing. This was despite the fact that Angela had spent over £20,000 on getting him the visa. This may look like a fraudulent relationship to you, and Donald Neaty, Angela's ex-husband, agrees. He says that Angela has always been the gullible type, and that it was clear that CJ just wanted to take advantage of her to leave Nigeria. No. He says he hasn't spoken to Angela in over 18 years and only got wind of her marital adventures with CJ in the papers. With CJ having been refused a visa, what was the next step for the two lovebirds? Well, Angela had decided to work towards securing a student visa for her husband. But it was a hard process for them. Applicants at that time were required to prove that they at least have an annual income of £18,600 between them. They also had to have cash savings of around £16,000. And there are charges of £1,464 for each applicant. Angela insists that the relationship isn't a scam since she admitted that she really didn't have much money and she was upfront about that with CJ from the beginning. We aren't quite sure of what's exactly happened with CJ and Angela since there's no news about them since 2017. Who knows? Maybe they are actually living happily ever after? We'd definitely be a little bit embarrassed that we ever doubted them. Number 6. The Russian Astronaut. An unnamed man scammed a little old Japanese lady by claiming that he was an astronaut who needed money to return to Earth. In a twist that may astound even the most accomplished comedy writers, this ruse worked, and the woman ended up sending our astronaut roughly $30,000. The entire story started with Instagram. This astronaut kept posting pictures of random things in space and said that he worked at the International Space Station. Okay, it's a bit left field, but it's not too ridiculous. His victim met him on the app and explained that he could only communicate on it because the astronauts at the space station had limited access to mobile service. He then got her to message him online, a Japanese messaging app. Online, he professed his love and she quickly reciprocated. He told her that he wanted to settle down in Japan and have a long and happy life with her. There was a problem though. He couldn't do that if he didn't leave the station, and to leave the space station, he needed money. You see, astronauts have to actually pay for the cost of their rocket back and also need to pay landing fees to the country they arrive in, and all of that was out of pocket. However, there was some good news. All of this was actually affordable and just cost thousands of dollars, not millions. Our astronaut's victim loved him so much that she decided to send him the money. Over 5 installments, she sent him 4.4 million Japanese yen, which was worth around $30,000 at the time. But even that wasn't enough. The astronaut kept asking for more money because, as you know, rockets are expensive. But this time, the victim had seen enough. She reported him to the police and was informed that she'd fallen victim to a love scam. Number 5. Trust me, I'm a celebrity. Brenton Robert Jarrett made a criminal career out of pretending to be a celebrity. Jarrett used his fake star power to defraud victims and even get some of them to get romantically involved. On one occasion, he said that he was Josh Hitchcock, the grandson of legendary director Alfred Hitchcock. But Alfred Hitchcock doesn't have a grandchild named Josh. He also claimed that he was Johnny Depp's brother and once claimed that he was Skeet Ulrich. While impersonating several celebrities, Robert made sure to take as many liberties as he could. He slept with women who believed he was a real celeb and took freebies from hotels and restaurants while impersonating other people. Jarrett left a trail of victims in his wake, and when he was eventually arrested, there was a lot of evidence to jail him. In court, he claimed that he had only committed his crimes because he was bipolar and was truly sad that his victims had suffered. We bet Skeet Ulrich also probably tried to pretend he was Johnny Depp's brother too. Number 4. The Official Secrets Act. Daryl Flynn defrauded multiple seniors of thousands of dollars by convincing them that she was an undercover police officer. In one of her scams, she convinced Diane Baston to part with her money in the belief she was assisting an important police investigation. So she drove Baston around town and had her take out loans and buy a bunch of electronics. Flynn had such a hold over Baston that she refused to even speak to the actual police for fear of breaching the Official Secrets Act, a policy made up by Flynn as part of her story. It apparently took police quite some time to convince her that they were the genuine article. Flynn's scam was simple. She convinced these seniors that they would be helping in an important police investigation that was investigating banks and managed to pilfer more than 20,000 pounds. Flynn used fake IDs to convince the seniors that they were doing the police a great service and continued scamming them to her heart's content. Her current scheme was just another in a long line of frauds where she used respectable positions to take advantage of the elderly. Thankfully, Flynn was soon arrested and made to face the music. She was eventually sentenced to 8 years in the slammer after feigning remorse for the first time ever. Looking at her picture, how could anyone believe her though? She looks like a scary person that lives in the trash can in a park on the bad side of town. Number 3. The $72 million lie. 18-year-old Muhammad Islam told a New York Magazine journalist that he had made $72 million trading stock. It was an incredible story with one glaring issue. It was a complete lie. In fact, Muhammad hadn't made a single dollar trading stock. But the magazine, who didn't bother to fact-check a teenager claiming to be incredibly wealthy, didn't know this and published an interview with him anyway. The headline said that Muhammad had made $72 million trading stocks during lunch break at school. The story was met with disbelief by everyone, because everyone isn't brain dead. The disbelief was so palpable that the entire case unraveled within just a few days. Before long, Muhammad himself was on CNBC, revealing that his entire claim to fame was fake. He confessed that he had never made a dime from trading and had merely lied about his earnings from trading and investment. But that wasn't what he had told the New York Magazine reporter who spoke to him. He'd played into the whole teenage millionaire trope and had spoken of making $1 million through trading. He even said that some investor was willing to give him $150 million to start a hedge fund. In the defense of the magazine, he'd shown the reporter bank statements showing that he was worth at least 8 figures. These were all pieces of evidence that the magazine needed to base its story on. When the story broke that Muhammad had just been telling an elaborate story, several news organizations picked up on it. So, Muhammad decided to hire a PR firm to manage his reputation. The firm argued that Muhammad wasn't a fraudster and had merely stretched a story and everything had gotten away from him. Since Muhammad didn't really gain a penny from the entire scheme, that may be true. But the fact that Muhammad created evidence to show that he was a millionaire makes us think that he might be a little more guilty of stretching the story than we first thought. So how did this all start if Muhammad had never traded stocks a day in his life? Where did the rumors that he was a millionaire stock trader start? Well, it happens that our man was making simulated trades at a high school investment club. Muhammad's simulated trades were so successful that he made more than $72 million off of them virtually. His numbers were even more impressive than the S&P. But instead of being truthful, he told the New York Magazine journalist that he had made the trades in reality. But people weren't gullible enough to believe his story, and just a little public pressure unraveled his entire tale. And you can almost get how this got away from him, right? You can see how he was like, oh, totally radical, dude. Or whatever kids say today. Oh, that's Gucci or something. When he found out a big magazine thought his trades were real. Then he did the thing we all wish we had the guts to do and said, I wonder how far I can take it. We would have chickened out. Instead, he's like, yeah, bro, I made like 72 million or something, bro. Dope. And then the reporter just eats it up without even questioning it. We're not condoning it. So definitely don't take advantage of some gullible major magazine with some insane story that we'd end up covering because it's so crazy. And don't shout us out while you're doing it just so we do a deep dive on you. Totally don't do that. Number 2, the village idiot. Yeah. Arthur Stimson believed that he had won the lottery, but he ended up being catastrophically wrong. The entire episode started when Stimson received an interesting email back in 2007. The email was titled, Attention, Notification of Award. The body of the mail told Stimson that he had won a massive cash prize in the Spanish lottery. The mail listed a number for him to call to claim his prize. When Stimson called, he was told that he had won £2.7 million. He was overjoyed at the prospect of this prize, and the scammers on the other end of the phone were overjoyed at the prospect of defrauding him. Stimson didn't know it yet, but calling that number would be the first in a series of awful decisions that would lead him to lose his home and his family and land in prison. The voice on the other end of the phone told Stimson that while he may have won the lottery, he wasn't going to get his money easily. Apparently, there were things like administration charges and transfer fees regarding taxes that he needed to pay. And Stimson had to pay all these fees to get access to his winnings. Why he didn't think they couldn't just deduct the money from the winnings, we'll never know. He probably realized it when he went to his cell way after the fact. Like he's just about to eat lunch and just freezes and says, wait a minute. Anyway, at this point, most people would have thought that, but not Stimson. He wanted to be a millionaire instead of a critical thinker. Before we continue, it's important to understand that Stimson isn't just a random guy. He's a pretty accomplished chartered surveyor, so he's not poor. He didn't need the money as he was relatively wealthy and had the respect of his community. But come on, who seriously wouldn't want an extra £2.7 million? Anyway, Stimson believed the voice and started paying phantom fees for a bounty that had never existed. Total, he paid out $50,000 in fake fees and had nothing to show for it. But the game was only just beginning. Over the next year or so, Stimson would send over $1 million in payments to the scammers. One time, he even put 75,000 pounds in a plastic bag and handed it over to supposed men from the lottery board. The scammers didn't let Stimson rest after taking that first 50,000 pounds. They kept asking for more money in fees and charges, and Stimson didn't see the problem in this. Or if he did, he made sure not to mention it anywhere. In due course, Stimson's money ran out and he was forced to start borrowing from neighbors to continue paying. He borrowed 100,000 pounds there, 10,000 pounds here, 50 pounds there, and on until he had borrowed over £1 million to pay the scammers. The most ludicrous thing about this case in particular is that just a few minutes of research on Google would have told Stimson that the lottery wasn't genuine. We mean, besides all of the other shady stuff they had him doing, not making it obvious. Seriously, how did him handing off a bag full of money to some guy like he's buying a ton of contraband not tip him off that something was weird? The bank that the con men used to give the entire scheme legitimacy didn't even exist. A simple Google search would have told Stimson that the so-called Casablanca bank had no digital footprint. Additionally, there was an email claiming that part of the windfall had been deposited at the Madrid branch of the Banca Unicaja Bank. While this bank is real, a Google search would have proven that it was mostly used in fraudulent schemes like this one. Through all this, our man Stimson was determined to get this windfall and paid through his nose for a fake cash prize. Stimson was so convinced of this that he told people that he would pay them £10,000 for every £1,000 he borrowed. He was so certain that the lottery payment would come through any time. You may wonder why he didn't just stop, but it's possible that he believed that he had reached the point of no return. He had simply paid and sacrificed too much to just stop now. He hoped to gamble and pray that the money eventually came through. While it's possible that Stimson did pocket some of the money he was borrowing and use them to pay other debtors, the police believe he gave everything to the scammer. Eventually, Stimson became bankrupt and had to forfeit his house to debt collector. He was arrested, and fraud and forgery charges were brought against him. He pled guilty to all of them and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The scammers were never caught, and since the case has now been closed, it's unlikely that they'll ever face any judgment for defrauding Stimson. Number 1. Internet trolls. Jessica Adelman tried to warn other people about a scam she fell victim to, but was bullied by internet trolls instead. Because the internet only cares about cats. See, that made you happy, didn't it? Jessica had been searching for a flexible online job that would allow her to work from home. But instead of getting a great remote job, she was duped of over £15,000. The website she saw claimed that people could make money through it by leaving reviews for a large company. But the site also encourages users who signed up to pay money for upgrades. These upgrades came with higher percentages of commission. That was the primary vehicle the site used to scam her. According to Jessica, the site never asked her for payment information, but when she started working, she got a prompt that if she paid £70, she would make £220. She was skeptical about the whole thing, but paid the money. Shockingly, she received £220 in return. Unfortunately, the real scam started when Jessica was put under pressure to review package orders, which she had to pay for. Outside that, the website allowed her to pay for an upgrade that would allow her to receive 5 times the commission that she earned. But that upgrade cost £7,500. So Jessica paid for it, and halfway through her workday, she received another package order that required her to pay £7,500. Before long, she was given another order that required her to pay £28,000. That's when she noticed that something was off and she had been scammed. But the story somehow got even worse. When Jessica brought the story to TikTok and told the world about it, she received hundreds of bullying comments. The bullies told her that she was gullible for falling for the scam, and many had no empathy for her. Thankfully, it wasn't all bad. Some people made helpful comments and told her how they had fallen for the same scam. It just goes to show how widespread this sort of scam is. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you'd rather have to do: bungee jump off a tall bridge or skydive out of a plane.